Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, dead slicers, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. I'm Useful Idiot. Welcome. And let's go back to Israel. I wanted to follow up my video about the high approval rating of Israelis for street executions by their soldiers and security forces. And I brought up an idea that I wanted to expand on in this video about poverty in Israel, because a lot of people are shocked to find out the degree of poverty that is in Israel, a very rich country with a relatively small population and a lot of aid, and yet they have a staggering poverty level. 22% of the population, in fact, is living in poverty. And of course, this doesn't include Gaza. That's the other underbelly of the poverty in Gaza, in Israel, is the fact that everything I'm going to talk about now doesn't include Gaza. When you include Gaza, of course, a staggering level of poverty and, lack of food and medicine and water in Gaza. But let's go to Israel, because we have a country that has a population of 8,463,000, and 74% Jews, 20% Muslim, and 6% Christians, who are all Arabs. There really are no other Christians in Israel right now, which may come as a surprise to other people. But this demographic is skewed when you get into poverty, because even though there's an 18% level of poverty amongst Jews, there's a 52% poverty rate amongst the Arab population living in Jerusalem and the West Bank. And so the poverty, of course, as anyone would guess, is certainly skewed to the Arab population living in Israel. But the other sector that suffers a lot is the ultra-Orthodox Jews. And of course, we know the ultra-Orthodox Jews, both in the United States and in Israel, are at odds with Israel's government policies, and therefore they become marginalized and become part of the poverty, the population of people living in poverty in Israel. And one of the surprising dark spots in those figures, too, is the fact there's 193,000 Holocaust survivors living in Israel, and 50,000 of them are living in poverty. And of course, a lot of the poverty there amongst ultra-Orthodox Jews and Holocaust survivors is living in the socialist welfare state in this, the only democracy in the Middle East, as is often touted. But let's get into the numbers, because like I say, the population is 8,463,000 and 1.7 million living in poverty. 22% of the population, 444,000 families, 776,000 children, and this is in spite of a GDP of $321 billion, which is pretty substantial for a country the size of Rhode Island. And their unemployment is relatively low, 6%, so we can't blame it all on unemployment. So a lot of people who are employed obviously are living in the poverty level there as well. No surprise. There's no surprise that Israel would share a lot of the characteristics of countries all over the world, with income inequality and high levels of poverty, and then a lot of wealth transfer to the top. And Israel is no different there. They have a very very small sector. They're 1%, as we might call it. They're elites, and a handful of families have controlled much of the power and industry and wealth in Israel since its inception. No surprise there. But Israel's an interesting company. It has the second highest poverty in the QECD, along with Mexico, Russia, Turkey, and Chile. So not very good company to be in as far as poverty. And like I say, all the more surprising, because we have a country with a GDP of $321 billion that it does import and exports technology and weaponry all over the world, and it has a very relatively small population and a big welfare state. And why can't it take care of more of its population? And then on top of that, since 1949, the United States has given the country $130 billion in aid. And that's military aid, financial backing, loan guarantees, charities and grants. So a lot of money going into Israel, not to mention a lot of Jewish money from the United States that gets put into the Israeli economy. And so what a surprise. A shocking amount of poverty in very interesting sectors in Israel, and a society that has to spend all its money on its military and its security apparatus that makes its elites very wealthy. So there's no reason to argue that they are the only middle class democracy in the Middle East, and they have the income disparity and the oligarchy to prove it. And one of the ways this story came to my attention as well is because the notorious Keith Rogers sent me a link that has an ad that airs on United States TV, and it's one of those looping charity ads that they feature on the cable channels and late night, asking for Americans to donate care packages to be sent to Israel. And what a shocking commentary that is on the state of Israel in the year 2016, that they can have this kind of poverty and still come to the United States pandering for more money on late night TV ads. And as I say, this doesn't include the staggering poverty in Gaza, which is a whole nother story. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.